Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. Well, we're here. We're at episode 3 of Hawkeye, Echoes. Yeah, we're just gonna spoil this episode. We're gonna go. Hopefully,
It's what we do. It's in our
I beat-
name.
Hopefully, you enjoy that approach.
It is our name, right? To spoil.
I mean, the episode even says "Spoiled Rotten" in it. This episode of Echoes. So that was a nice shout out from the writers. That was definitely intentional.
Yeah.
All right, so we start off with Maya. She's in class. She's all feeling
Young
like,
Maya.
Yes, it's very young. It's 2007 Maya.
Right.
And she's feeling isolated from everybody for obvious reasons. Like, I am deaf and everyone else is. I think the show made a point of showing you all the different kids connecting by talking to each other. So
Yes.
she's kind of by herself and she can't hear, or sorry, I'm assuming she's reading lips. So she's only able to get portions of what the teacher is saying. But I kind of like where it went, where it was like, well, I guess that just means I can focus on getting my work done. And she, because you see the teacher, I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like the teacher was like, oh, right, I should be checking in on Maya. I didn't think it was like, oh, she sucks, I think she was kind of like, right, I should check in on her. And then she did, and was like, oh, you got the work done. Like,
right. I it's hard for me to tell because in that scenario, I could see it both ways. I could see it like, what the hell is this little kid doing? Like, stop screwing around. Oh, okay. Like, the part that for me that sucked with that interaction, which I'm sure it sucked for a lot of people, is realizing that the teacher would never apologize even when they realize that they're in the wrong. It's like, hey, yeah, I unnecessarily scolded you, I'm sorry about that. Like, like,
right. Well, I didn't see
like that little
I
smile.
think this was all in. The reason I feel like it's the teacher checking is because I think the teacher at a certain, yes, of course, came up to her and started talking, but then she was using facial cues. So I think there was a sternness in her facial, and then her softening was me really being like, I think she realizes she needs to communicate a different way with her. And that was kind of how I saw that interaction playing out.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those situations where
So
I can't fully
sorry
tell,
might not work.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that facial expression at that point was a little bit more connected to her, given how harsh it looked like. She was going to be like, hey, stop goofing off in class. That's what it obviously looked like to me. Versus you're actually doing your work and you're doing a good job. And the amount of dragon references, there's the first dragon reference here today.
Right.
I want to ask you about that later on, but yeah, she runs as fast as a dragon or something like that.
Yes.
I thought that was cool.
So then it goes to her with her dad, played by John McLaren, who I've like in everything he's ever been in. Like, he's been in Fargo, the TV show. He was in Westworld. He was in Doctor Sleep. He's in a bunch of things. He's in Reservation Dogs.
Doctor Sleep. Doctor Sleep is really good.
He's in Reservation Dogs, playing like a kind of goofy cop. Like, I just think he's great. And he really anchored him and the girl playing young Maya and adult Maya, played by Alakwa Cox. I feel like anytime Maya the character was in a scene with her dad, it felt so anchored. But the two of them really bringing things together. But this is the conversation they have where it's kind of like, she asks, what sound does the sky make? What sound does a dragon make? And gets them talking about dragons and how they live in two different worlds. And that's going to have to be Maya. She's going to have to learn how to live in two different worlds. And that's where they introduced the idea of, you are going to be able to do that by looking. Like, you have to observe, you have to watch, which she was doing earlier, but I guess without any purpose of now she knows to be looking for purpose and how to move within the two worlds that she lives in.
Yeah.
And not more importantly, it also sets up, obviously there are some money issues because
Yes.
he thought she was going to a school with deaf children, and he was like, nah, that's not going to work out.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, but this will be better for you. But it was still kind of like, okay, so they something went wrong, which is why he's part of the
tracksuit
mafia.
Yeah. I really appreciate the fact that he doesn't gaslight the child and goes like, there's something wrong with the registration, like, they're processing next month. I like that he doesn't do that. I like that he just goes like, he like, the facial expression is like, shame, I'm sorry, I know I promised you this, but here are the advantages that I want to have you look at, and think the things that would cause you to appreciate this later on in life that you don't see now as a kid. Like it's like kind of like when my parents told me like, you're not going to like that when you're older, and then I'm like, shut up, you'll see, I'm gonna want to eat candy every single day for breakfast. And then I'm like, yeah, no, you're right, that was a good call on your part.
I really loved watching them work together, or not work together, exist together. And in the comics, obviously Echo can look at someone and copy their movement, kind of like Taskmaster. I think this episode might have been actually that she can look at someone and see their weakness. I don't know if she can so because the next scene is them in karate class.
Yes.
And I saw her look at the guy take someone down, but she was focusing like on his feet placement. I feel like I agree. She was kind of like honing in on, that's my in. Like that's
his weakness.
I have this prosthetic leg, so I can actually that is where my strength will come in.
Yeah,
against his regular legs, because that's how she takes him down. And later on, there's other scenes that makes me feel like maybe to differentiate from Taskmaster, they've made it so that Maya actually can look at someone and then quickly assess what their weakness is and then move on from there.
Yeah, I'd like to think that is the greater change in what they're changing the powers to be, because you're right, it is too similar to Taskmaster. Now, if they went the route of Taskmaster being an android or a robot, an AI and something like that,
well, that is then, in Black Widow. It's just an AI that's in there and controls Taskmaster.
Yeah, absolutely. So
this would be a difference, even if they were going with she can look at it and do it.
Yeah. Like I was sorry, I chose the wrong wording to try to point out that difference, that small subtle difference of the AI versus, like, it's kind of like Jarvis tech and all that kind of stuff in her head, versus like this is like, no, I learned how to do this through what my uncle taught me, or whoever that figure is in her life. I can't remember. The dad, right? Is it the dad? I want to assume it's the dad.
You're talking about Taskmaster?
No, that Maya and the new actor that you're from Fargo.
Yeah, William, her dad. Yeah. William, yeah,
dad, right? Yeah, okay. So like that relationship with the dad is really, really good. God, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but
I'll keep going. Maybe it'll come to you. So
right, to point out the AI, because I think you're right, because later on in the episode, when she does officially is grown up Maya and meets Kate Bishop, and I know I'm jumping the gun just a little bit, but she points out one of his.
That's why I wanted to move in within this scene, because we'll get to this.
But you're right. Yeah. She points out one of his weaknesses there, and I think you're right. I think the MCU is going in the direction of like she can see everyone's greatest weaknesses, because I don't know if it's from the perspective of like, because you had to hide behind the shadows and observe people, that you're better at looking at what other people are trying to cover up or something like that. And like the focus on the ankle, you're absolutely right. I was like, why are they focusing on the ankle so much? And then when she went up for her turn, I was like, oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah. Also, apparently the kid that got taken down at the beginning of the scene was Kazi.
Yes.
I feel like the show's not really doing a great job of me like tracking the importance of Kazi.
It's either that, you're right. I don't think
I'm like, I think that's an important thing that I know that that's Kazi. Because to me, I was just like, that's just another kid. I don't know.
Yeah, but we're only told through the credits though.
But that's what I'm saying. That's a bad thing. I should know in that moment that that's Kazi, because that plays into later, like,
right,
to know that they've actually been together that long.
Right.
I was just assuming, I guess they just started working together as adults, but to know that they knew each other when kids means more.
You're right, because now if they have a flashback scene and Kazi and like Echo have like a death scene, and it's like, remember, I've always taken care of you, or something like that, and it flashes back to when they were like kids in that scene. I'm like, wait, what? That was Kazi? You're absolutely right. I wish they had
really
like
seem like they knew each other in the scene. They kind of, but it's only important to the point of me being like, I'm confused by how they're using Kazi. But
I've heard this is not my idea. I've definitely heard other people talk about this, but other people, content creators, and I think New Rock Stars is who I'm attributing this to, the origins of this. But the thought was, if Kazi and Echo were there and the father training, maybe that's some sort of recruitment camp for like their tracksuits. And I'm like, it's not a bad idea to prey on the vulnerable kids that are like liking violence and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, that could be a very feasible thing, I feel.
Yes. And speaking of, grooming, I believe everyone has just come to the conclusion that Uncle, who pinches her cheeks, is clearly the Vincent D'Onofrio version of Kingpin.
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, whether or not you're buying into that, or whether or not you think it
sounds like him. I think that's,
everyone's talking about that laugh. I don't know Vincent D'Onofrio that well, but I mean, from the evidence that they put out from the new Rockstars video, it's pretty compelling, unless it's like a pure Marvel misdirect and it's like, we got Vincent D'Onofrio's brother. I can't pronounce that. That's consistent with this podcast.
I think it is. I don't think it's his version from Netflix. Or maybe it is. I don't know. We've talked about this offline. I'm a bit bummed out that they can't just recast. Like, even if they were like, you know what, no one can do it better than Vincent D'Onofrio, which I don't think is true. But anyway, even if they did that, I would rather it be the J.K. Simmons in Far From Home situation, where it's like, he is playing J. Jonah Jameson. He is not playing J. Jonah Jameson from the Raimi movies.
Yeah.
I would rather that it's Wilson Fisk played by Vincent D'Onofrio again, but this is a completely different, we're not bringing in the Netflix stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want that version of what you're talking about. I want the same actor playing the same character in a different take in the MCU. That's what I want. You're right. The J.K. Simmons being the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, don't need that. But him carrying the same energy, him carrying the same energy into the tabloid Daily Bugle thing that he's doing for the online press thing, love it. Yeah, that's great. That's good. It makes sense. It's like, it adds to his craziness. It's like, oh, you're a Breitbart guy. Okay, no wonder you act this way. It's kind of fun.
So yeah, that scene sets up Kingpin, but I think also sets up that maybe she's able to pinpoint weaknesses. And I've seen the new Rockstar stuff where they think this is kind of like where they groom kids to be part of the tracksuit mafia. Sure.
I mean, what would make sense? I mean, if at the very, very least, it's gangster daycare for the tracksuits. So it's like the kids that don't go there, and then their
parents can go do what they need to do.
For the kids that don't want to follow in the family business, that kind of stuff.
So the next scene is a time jump, and we see not present day Maya, obviously, but Maya during the blip, because there's a Ronin.
Yes.
Present, and he is killing everybody, including her dad. And again, a very strong last scene with Maya and her dad William. God, I thought it was really well done, and I like that when he holds her face, it puts the handprint on her, like from the comics. This time blood, usually it's a white handprint, but I appreciated that because obviously that would be the moment where she's like, well, I am on a mission now. I am I have become Echo. Like, this is it.
I love I really love and appreciate the mirroring here in that not only is Kate Bishop's origin story as well as Echo's origin story both very, very familiar, and both very mirrored, but both started by Clint Barton, either as Hawkeye or as Ronin. It's him that puts them both on the trajectory of either trying to be a superhero or trying to be a villain.
Well, yeah, I mean, she certainly wants to avenge her dad's death.
Yes,
but obviously, by the time we see her, she's apparently the boss of the
of that
tracksuit mafia. So
of that.
I guess
faction.
she has just become a villain.
Yep.
In that sense, I was trying to give her benefit of the doubt, but there is no benefit of the doubt because she clearly says I'm the boss, and Kazi agrees. So I'm like, all right.
Right. But I mean, well, whether they're villainous or not is dependent on what they're actually ultimately aiming for as an organization, right? I mean, when we have like the God, what was the God? I forgot what her name is. Morgenthau and the Hand People. From that show, when they're like they were seen as criminals, but ultimately they're trying to do good. Maybe this could be a Robin Hood situation, but I highly doubt it given what's going on. Yeah, it's not based on the source material too. But I'm like, yeah, I'm talking myself right there.
I'm not even basing it off the source, I'm basing it off of what the show is telling me, which is they're the bad guys, and they've got criminals. Yes, we have met with Maya and Tracksuit Mafia, but there's someone above them who's even worse, which again I'm assuming is Kingpin. But like, and that the show Hawkeye is telling us that they're bad guys.
Yeah. And that Hawkeye, well, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, otherwise Hawkeye or Ronin wouldn't have that history with the tracksuits. Just murking murking just villains and all that kind of stuff, and gangsters of the criminal underworld.
So yeah, that scene worked for me, and then it jumps to present day where Kate and Clint are,
captive.
They're captive. I'm not going to get into all the details. I think yes, it's funny with the Imagine Dragon stuff, but the meat of the actual scene is what I was talking about, which is Maya zoning in on Clint's hearing aid.
Correct.
And being like, oh well, you're relying too much on technology. Like it is a thing that I've seen even in non-comic book stuff, like that movie Sound of Metal with Riz Ahmed. Just the idea of like, maybe don't try and hold on to that hearing with the hearing aid. Like, embrace sign language, embrace what that means when you actually let go of the idea of I need to hear that way.
Yeah,
it is going to hold you back. And I thought that was very interesting because she wasn't pointing out like something that, I mean, chances are she feels you could be better at what you do if you weren't, dealing with your hearing aid, which she proves later when she kicks it out of his head, and that kind of knocks him off kilter for a bit. I thought that was interesting. And even before that, we did miss a scene where she was boxing and she checked and looked at the guy's hand and how that was hurting him, and that was her into beating the guy when she was in the boxing ring. So I think that was like 3 things in a row of her not copying someone's move, but being like, oh, that's there. I know how to pinpoint.
I know how to exploit this.
Yes.
I agree.
That's the word I've been searching for this whole time.
Exploit.
Exploit the weakness there.
I think you're dead on with that. I think first and foremost, I think if the Taskmaster thing is true, that it needs AI to copy exactly the same way, then having it a human ability that she just learns is kind of like a weird thing. So changing it to be like, hey, through this perspective, I can recognize weakness. And I think that's what it is. I genuinely do. I was like, are we on the same page about this? Because in the comics, she's like, hey, I'm this copycat and I can do whatever.
Right.
And that's cool. Right. By the way, we did mention the prosthetic leg as well.
I mentioned it when we were texting.
We were texting, but that is her real prosthetic leg.
Yes.
So it's really wonderful to see on-screen representation in that way.
It's not part of the character from the comics. But it's an example where it's like it's not going to change anything if we leave it in. So why cast it out? For everyone's comfort for viewing.
It's a great thing. I love it. It's a great thing.
So yeah, they kind of have that, and also through Clint and Maya talking, I know that Kazi is doing the translating, but through Clint and Maya talking, he says Natasha killed Ronan. Kazi decides to change it to Black Widow, which whatever, sure. I don't know why. If he knows that Natasha's Black Widow, then Maya wouldn't know that Natasha's Black Widow, but it's whatever. Maybe it's easier to sign Black Widow than Natasha Romanoff.
Probably.
Maybe that was the idea there, but because he mouths Natasha and Kazi signs Black Widow. But so he's basically decided, like, Ronan died when not Scarlett Johansson, I should just say her character name, Black Widow, showed up to be like, hey, we've got a way to bring everyone back. And he's like, don't know for a fact,
don't kill me with hope.
Don't kill me with hope. And we know for sure that Black Widow is dead. So
correct.
That all checks out. There's a metaphorical death and then a real death in that statement. And they're kind of just like, doesn't matter, Ronan's back, so like someone's got to pay for this.
I would love if, like, during that period of time, that 5-year blip period where he went to get a sleeve tattoo, where he I would love if he tattooed the word Ronan into his arm. It's just like, I'm not Ronan, what are you talking about?
Just not thinking about the future, just being like, well, this is what I am now, I gotta tattoo this.
Ronan established like 2000 something.
And then he also just started tattooing a list of the people he's killed. William from the Tracksuit Mafia.
Yes. That would be fantastic.
So yeah, then Kate tries to talk, and they do not give you any hint at what she's saying. I can't read lips, so I don't know. It was easier for me to see that he mouthed Natasha than it was to figure out what Kate was saying. But I think the importance of not giving any version of subtitles for that was, it didn't really matter what Kate was saying. I think it was more the fact that she wasn't giving information that Maya needed, and Maya just like, you know what, fuck this, why are we even listening to this idiot? And then she chokes her out. I think that was the point of that, was that she was just like, I don't want to hear this. I don't need this bullshit. I'm gonna kill it. Because I was just like, oh, like, I wonder what she said to get her mad. But I think it didn't matter. It was just,
I don't think it would have mattered. I think it's just one of those situations where it's like, you're talking too much, but you're saying nothing.
Exactly.
And that's going to annoy me, and I need to establish my dominance in the scenario, so I'm going to choke you out.
And that throws Kazi off, because he's like, whoa, like, what are you doing? You've lost it. You're not.
That was interesting.
When we saw her at the end of episode 2, I know we didn't talk about her last episode, but we saw she was this calm, cool, collected character. She could get people to move away just by waving her hand. I understand that she is deaf and doesn't speak, but she didn't sign go away. She kind of just was like, get out of the way. And that guy knew, like, oh, okay, time for me to shut up. I'm out. But so then for her to like lose that coolness in that moment, I can see Kazi being like, whoa, all right. Maybe this is a little too close to home for you. Maybe we should pull back. But that distraction, I guess, is enough for Clint to be like, to get loose. I know it's because Kazi hastily redid the bondage or whatever. I thought that played out interestingly. And he only was broken out so that he could sign. But that all worked for me. I didn't think it was too convenient. I was just like, oh, okay, sure. Like, she saw the hearing aid and she was like, no, sign. So she let him loose, and then Kazi had to quickly put it back together, which gave him enough time to break loose, and kind of does a bit of fighting with the Tracksuit Mafia throughout the warehouse. And then Maya kind of takes over and really puts him on the back foot. She's like, no, I know what I'm doing, and gets him. And I think it's like barely that he kind of makes his escape and once he gets his bow and arrow back, he's able to work the room a bit better and take back control. He is really struggling then. He really is. And it's just like, it's not like a situation where it's like 1v15, let's say, that it's just like, oh, okay, he's just gonna work his way through the room. It's like, no, I was genuinely like, I think Echo's
got him here. He's going to get injured or captured, and Kate's going to get away or something like that. You know what I mean? I felt like no way they're both getting away out of this one. I thought one of them would still like have to fall behind and the other one gets away or something like that. But that was it. Generally had that outcome was not what I thought it would be in that scene.
I mean, unfortunately for me, and this isn't because of who I follow, this was just they were really pushing, like, just like YouTube for me was just pushing that scene that they put out on Disney Plus Day where they leave the KB toys in the car. Like, that was just pushed. I knew how it was going to end. I was like, that's really unfortunate that, like, leading up to this, you really pushed that scene that sort of cuts the tension of what happens in the warehouse.
Oh, you mean getting out into the car?
Yeah,
part?
like that scene, that was really one, it revealed no, he definitely can't hear without the hearing aid. So I knew that before the show even started.
Right.
And like that they would get out of that situation because obviously that's what leads to the car. But that's fine. I just thought like it was weird that they kept pushing that, considering it gives away so much of what's gonna happen. But I think they were so proud of the idea of like, look, we have the car from the comics, but they're not gonna use it. And I was like, all right, that doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the funny thing is. Like, we got the car from the comics and the apartment and the dog, but we're not gonna do the thing that you want us to do with it. It's I'm like, okay, that's fun, but like. I like the entire time he was like, I'm not smashing a challenger. Like, he loves that car. It's like, no, I respect it. And like the fact that he gets smashed anyways, it was really, really funny to me. It's like, smash it anyways.
So yeah, they get into the car, not the car, not the Challenger, but they get into a car,
the crappy car.
Yeah, and it's kind of this either real oneer or stitched together oneer, doesn't matter. I thought it was very good camera work. As you kind of get a 360 of what the action is. And then even when they stopped doing the 360 and it's Kate getting out of the car to shoot the arrows, I thought all of that was
great transition.
Well done.
Yeah. Great callback to the same kind of camera work that was done in Children of Men. That was a great movie too. I really, really enjoyed that. But yeah, great scene, great camera work. That worked really, really fun for me.
Yeah, I like that. And then you get to see all the trick arrows. But yeah, one big one that I think everyone liked was that he had a Pym Tech arrow. I was just like, wow, oh nice. I thought that was a cool way of bringing in the superhero stuff. Like, yeah, it didn't. But yeah, sorry, what?
Sorry, I'm just appreciating the fact that you're like, one big one there. I'm like, yes, it was a big arrow.
Well, it turned an arrow into a big arrow, that's for certain. The Pym Tech arrow was normal size. So yeah, I thought that was cool. And I even like in that chase when they end up on the bridge and Kate is forced to use the USB arrow, that the friend of like the, I guess, lieutenant from the Tracksuit Mafia was so worried when that arrow hit him. Like, he was like, oh my god. I was like, that's nice. Like, he genuinely cares about that guy.
Yeah,
like there wasn't, they didn't play it like, I don't care. Like, the guy who got hit with the arrow did, but his friend was genuinely like worried for him. And I was like, that's nice. I think that's a nice little touch they had there.
Yeah,
they care about each other that way.
Yeah, I like, along with that action and along with that conversation that the Kazi has with Echo about like, whoa, are we really escalating to this level right now? It really sets the tone to the tracksuits being like low level or like mid-level gangster material, not really like high up there, really just aiming to get money more than anything else, not really looking to terrorize people, right? Or just
they have to stay low because the idea was we probably got too big for our britches, which is what brought Ronan on.
Right.
So,
fair.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah.
But I like that it's point. I like that it's setting, this is the level of gangster that we're dealing with here.
What I'm saying is they were higher up than that and they got knocked down a peg by Ronan.
I see. Gotcha.
I think that's the idea. That is the idea that they've set up, is that they were bigger time criminals. It's just because of Ronan, they're like, yeah, maybe we made ourselves too visible. We need to be operating more under the radar right now.
Need to be taking some notes from the Vulture.
Yes,
that's what they need to be doing.
All right, so then they get away on like the grappling hook arrow and use the plunger arrow from earlier. And they get away on a subway, and it's a nice moment of Clint being like, you know what, maybe you are right to say that you're one of the best archers. Like, that was really good. And as I said earlier, like, I liked all the stuff of Kate being able to just get things done with the bow and arrow.
Yeah.
Yes, he kind of helps her through by telling her like how to aim it, but it's not like she's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, like earlier when he got free, and she's like, I don't know what you did. He says something this time, and she's like, yep, got it, I can just do it.
Yeah. He's teaching her and mentoring her in a way, in a very hands-on kind of way. It's great. This internship is great.
And so that's nice. And then they have to go home to walk the dog.
Yeah. I really like that scene in the subway where, you know, because his hearing aid is broken, it's busted, he can't hear her or anything like that. And they're sitting on opposite sides, like his ear that's I guess the ear that's good is facing her, and she's saying everything, and then like he obviously can't hear, but they're so on the same page as two characters. It's like, hey, we're both thinking about the dog at the exact same time. They're being like,
neither ear is good, by the way.
Neither ear, it's both.
No.
Okay, I thought it was just the one ear that
he just has one hearing aid.
Oh, I see.
Neither ear is good. That's why earlier
I see.
He said, I have to let you, I'm switching sides so that you can be on the side with the hearing aid.
Right. I see.
Yeah,
okay.
Neither ear is good. That scene is they're communicating without actually hearing each other.
Yeah, and I like that. It's like that they're both on the same page as characters, and I'm like, that's really, really cool that, you know, they have that. That was a great moment. Work for comedy as well as like they're on the same page. They're cool. They like each other.
So yeah, then a bunch of stuff happens, but there's the scene where Clint is home alone, and he gets a call, and Kate kind of comes in after walking the dog and has to let him know, oh, you're not talking to your wife, you're talking to your son, Nathaniel.
Yeah, little boy's voice. Yeah.
Well, not that she knows that it's Nathaniel. He gets
it.
He gets that it's Nathaniel, obviously. I liked it in the moment. I thought it was very touching. It gave Jeremy Renner a chance to really be the dad. Like, I genuinely, like, the way he was delivering his lines, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a dad talking to his son. Like, it didn't feel like acting. It felt so natural. And like, obviously that isn't his actual son, like, they're acting. So I just thought, like, wow, he's doing a really good job. Then my sister's like, why didn't he just say that his hearing aid broke? And I'm like, yeah, like, only because like I get that what it was doing, it's showing the loss, it's showing the cost of it, but like, I feel like you don't get, it doesn't feel the same way. But he did initially tell his wife, can't you just text? But like, I didn't understand why he was hiding anything from his son, only because that son, Nathaniel, was the only one that actually signed with him and knows for a fact, oh, my dad can't hear. So it was weird that he was doing this thing where he wasn't giving his son all the information, because he doesn't have to be like, oh, I got captured and beat up. He could just say, my hearing aid broke, sorry buddy, like I can't actually hear. And you still get that thing of he's missing out on hearing his son's voice, that hurts him, that he has to go to resort to texting or whatever. But like, it was this weird, they were I don't get it, like, why did he lie to his son? I'm like, that it just made me like think like, yeah, like that was the son that you could be like, yeah, sorry son, my hearing aid broke, I can't actually hear you.
Yeah, my assumption is you're talking about it because I remember there's of the kids, there's the one middle child daughter, the old son and the young son, right? So it's the young son that is Nathaniel. Okay, I'm trying to be like, is it the old or the young son? Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me unless it's like, because it's not like the kids don't know that he's not Hawkeye and that he does.
They know he's Hawkeye. They know he stayed to save the day. They know that he can't hear. Like, and as I said, and Nathaniel was the one that actually embraces that and actually would sign with him.
And it's weird. You're right, because it's just like, well, are you lying to your kids to tell them that you're okay? Is that the point that you're like, oh, like, don't worry about me, like I'm completely okay, I'm not hurt? I'm like, that's a very good point. Like, hey, my hearing aid ran out of batteries, or I turned it off, or I don't know where it is right now. It's just so easy to say, but like, yeah, it's a weird situation. Why would he do that? It's not like it meant anything.
I think that the idea, as I said, it was supposed to show the loss. But I feel like you could still get that across if he was like, yeah, sorry, I can't hear you. That's you still
Yeah.
get that loss of, obviously you don't get the moment where he says it's so nice to hear your voice, knowing he can't hear the voice.
Yeah.
So maybe that emotional push is better than the logical step of just being like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I think it's purely pushing that emotional thing, not the
Which is
logical
fine.
side, which is completely fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just when my sister brought it up, I was like, oh, you gotta tell. I don't feel the same way about the scene anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, yeah.
I feel like one of those things where it could be the idea, because he's broken a few promises to the kids already. He's missed the gingerbread house. He's missed the movie marathon. I think the ugly sweaters is the thing that he has left with the kids, because like I keep remembering to the dinner scene where it's like, all right, this Christmas, what does everyone want to do? And then everyone lists off one, and then it's the ugly sweater thing that doesn't get. It's not done yet, so I'm hoping he just shows up to Christmas Day in an ugly sweater and is like, yeah, I got movies and we're doing this too. And we got more gingerbread houses made with arrows this time. That kind of stuff, which it probably will end up doing that in the series.
But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a really odd thing that he just isn't honest about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. Maybe it's just like, hey, I miss my kids so much that I just want to provide them with the support and comfort and not let them know that I'm in any issue or anything like that. Maybe I guess
what I'm saying is I don't
kids.
see how saying, hey, my hearing aid broke makes it seem like he's in any more danger than what's already happening.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I can't see it either. None of that's rational.
His hearing aid did break. You don't have to say why it broke or how it broke, but the fact is his hearing aid is broken. He can't hear him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that still leads to not telling the whole truth here, kid. It seemed like a lot.
Yeah, that was a good scene until you're right. You work through it and you're like, wait, why couldn't he just communicate that?
Yeah,
it's weird.
Maybe it's tied to the whole he relies too much on technology, but I think
maybe that's true. Yeah,
I think I'm reaching with that, but maybe that was the idea, is that he hasn't embraced this yet. Right, so then we cut back. This is where Kazi really confronts Maya about the whole, bro, like, dude, what was that? I wish I didn't say bro, but like, yo, why'd you do that? Why did, like, you can't,
it's hard not to.
And then she points out, like, hey, if this was my dad, you wouldn't even question it. And he was like, your dad put everyone first. That what you just did clearly wasn't putting us first.
Right.
And she was kind of like, well, this is shut down because I'm the boss, so who's in charge? And he was like, yeah, you're in charge. Again, that interaction would play better for me. I mean, I guess I know now, but if going into that interaction, I knew that they were pretty much equals back then in the karate days,
right?
And now they've got this power imbalance. That scene would hit better for me than me being like, I don't know, man, he's just an interpreter, it seems like. And again, this is where the knowledge of the comics also kind of ruins that scene for me, because I'm like in the comics, that guy is not a part of the Tracksuit Mafia. He's just, they bring him on to get results. Like he is the boss. Like they have to follow his lead in it. So I'm kind of just like, I don't even know what they're doing with Kazi.
Right.
But if I knew for a fact, oh, that kid there, like they used to be on the same page basically, and now he's dealing with, oh, my best friend is my boss now, I feel like that scene plays a bit better for me.
I would agree.
I think it should be on the show to let me know for a fact that that's Kazi earlier on than the credits.
I 110% agree with that. If they were like best friends and they're like, hey, you're losing, like, and now he's losing her best friend, like he's losing his best friend, and he's his best friend's doing something that he doesn't agree with. I think that's great conflict for Kazi, and I would like that. This doesn't work out quite so well, because that argument is very, very, very genuine. The idea is like, yeah, your father put everyone else first, not this. This is you putting yourself first and your own vengeance first, which is true.
Yeah. So yeah, I just find that, like, I hope that with the next 3 episodes they figure something out, because I'm a bit bit confused where they're going with or maybe I'm not confused. I guess I get what on paper they're doing, but it doesn't really feel like it's the execution is going well for me.
No, it's not. It's, you know, what's really interesting to me, and I think I kind of did this to myself the last episode that we recorded, when we started looking up like the actors' names on IMDb. For some reason, the IMDb also had the episode amounts that they're credited in. So I'm just like, oh, yeah, which is clearly false. That's a misdirect, because I was like, oh yeah, the father's clearly coming back. He's listed in 5 episodes, and he's like, and there's only 6, so he's coming back next episode right away. Nope, didn't happen. So I'm like, okay, I'm not relying on that anymore. So I don't know when Yelena's coming in.
I should have known that from
yeah.
What was it? Yeah, I think it was WandaVision. It was like I looked something up and I'm like, oh well, this is really thrown things off by looking up the actors' names.
Right.
Yeah, I should have remembered. With Disney Plus, just you gotta let the whole show go, and then
I think they're just predicting. IMDb's predicting until the episodes actually air, and then they're like, yeah, she wasn't actually in this episode. They're just, I guess Disney just gave us a credit for the whole like season, and then we have to do it for every single person. So yeah, that's not indication for when these characters are going to show up, or how many episodes they have left, or anything like that. So sorry for misdirecting y'all if I did.
So Kate and Clint get his hearing aid fixed. They have a nice little moment of being outside the doctor's office, and she says, good thing you're Hawkeye, not Hawkier. I thought that was a nice, comic book moment from the Fraction one.
She's making the dad jokes. That's so good. Love it.
And then they eat breakfast, and this is where they really talk about like the cost of being a hero, which I've heard people say this is the point of the show, like the same way WandaVision is about grief, the same way we talked about Falcon and Winter Soldier being about when you think you're
imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Loki can be about purpose, sure. I guess that's
purpose, or self-love, or self-acceptance, or whatever.
Yeah, I thought it was more about self-love and self-acceptance, but it's purpose, sure. Yep. And then this one's about cost of being a hero, which I don't.
It's about.
I'm sure that is what it is. I just feel like that's not really a relatable thing, because there's no like
it's
analog.
Totally not relatable. It's not relatable whatsoever.
It's the cost of being a superhero. I don't know about that. But I do. That. But I get how the podcast I was listening to was on the Ringerverse, House of R, and they said that, and I was like, I understand how you come to that conclusion watching this show, because of this conversation, because of how things play out. But I'm just like, you see how that's not a universal thing though, right? Like this, we were looking at like things that these superhumans and extraordinary people can explore, but they are still things that could happen to an everyday person. Like even if you think about a firefighter, like who they put in the show as well, they made a point of being like, yeah, they're down there, this is Hawkeye we're talking about, right? So they made a point of going out of like, no, we're talking about the price of being a superhero. If you're a firefighter, you can just go LARPing and blow off steam. You can have fun, versus if you're Hawkeye, what's that gonna be? So I feel like they're probably right that that's what the show is focusing on, because that's what I was asking for last episode, like what is the aim for this? But I feel like if that's true, then yikes, that might not have been the best thing to explore, especially since Kate and Clint are co-leads, so she hasn't had the cost of anything yet. It's just like the only progression I can really see here is through Kate, and it is the idea of like, this is the life. If you want to do this, if I really am your hero, I'm not your, like, I love that he's like, I'm not your role model, because it's like, hey, I don't want you to make the choice and make the decisions I have to make, and watch my friends die, watch this to happen, watch this happen. Yeah, I saved the world. And that sounds I saw
great.
that as,
but
sure, there's that, but I think he also saw that as like, and this is what Watchmen is about, like, you make that decision that you're the super. That's why I feel like it's not really a universal truth, because they are talking about superheroes. The idea that like I was an Avenger, so I'm like thinking about like I know what's right and wrong. Things go wrong for me, and I become Ronin. Like that trajectory of like you're one bad day away from being like, well, now I'm Ronin. I kill everybody, and I know what's right. There's no like assessing the situation. You do bad things, I'm killing you. I think that was kind of where he was. That was his ultimate thing of like, yeah, there's a cost to it. You don't get to see your kids, but also you lose sight.
You lose your
kind of
humanity.
Lose that you lose your humanity.
You lose your personality. You lose yourself in that battle. Like the things that you ultimately have to do at the end of the day are going to fundamentally change who you are. And it's like, that's the sacrifice he's talking about, along with like, hey, you can't have a normal social life. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. And, you know, like you got to run around the world. You got to be a wanted fugitive. Like we forget the idea that like Steve Rogers and everyone that left with him, he was
Sokovia.
Yeah, and he was on the run for like I don't know how many years, but he was basically fugitive, like running around, like with no place to live, homeless for like 3 years or something like that. It's not pretty. And they're talking about that reality, and they're being like, "Hey, this is not all the glorified stuff that you see and all that kind of stuff. It still is that, but and this is where I like what Colossus says to Deadpool. It's the idea of like." Most people think to be a hero, you have to do heroic things all the time. But realistically, it's just 4 or 5 like major decisions that you make in your life that other people wouldn't make. Right. And in the situation, it's very, very clear. It's like, hey, Kate, you have this embellished, polished up idea of what a hero is and what their life is. But this is the actual reality of it. You're only seeing the polished aspect of what happened in the battles of New York and that we saved New York. But what you don't see is the fact that I turned into Ronin and went ballistic and killed a whole bunch of people without following due process for a legal system whatsoever. I was just a white guy that decided people needed to die. And that's exactly what happened. And I got away with it. And, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And
agreed.
I think the biggest limitation here is the fact that he, for obvious reasons, has not communicated to anyone that he has been Ronin.
I got the sense she knew he was Ronin, but I didn't like the charade she was playing of like, she must be someone that's close to you. I was like, no, all right, just say you know it's Ronin.
Yeah, I don't like that either, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, he can't make that point without her knowing, oh, this is how bad you went. I idolized you. You are a hero and you legitimately turned into a villain for this many years. And we're not that way to these people and all that kind of stuff. Like she's picking a side and she needs to know that. And like the fact that she doesn't know is what's holding this back. I feel they need to know ultimately that he is Ronin and that he needs to account for that. I'm assuming
they're saving that for like the next 3 episodes, the fallout that happens when when it's confirmed that he's Ronin.
Well, yeah, my assumption is that the episode that Yelena comes in is when the truth comes out. Because right now, the whole Echo situation being like, I don't believe you. That's a very convenient story that she dies and that Ronin goes away and that we can't find anyone now. You know, like at some point, it's.
I mean, maybe what is that character's name? Julia Louis-Dreyfus' character. I never remember that name, but like Contessa, like maybe she does know that he's Ronin because she seems to know everything, but she didn't present it that way. She presented it as you're going after Clint Barton,
the guy that killed
Hawkeye,
your sister.
So I don't know why Yelena coming would be when she finds out he's Ronin, because she's going after.
No, when everyone else finds out.
But why?
When the tracksuits find out, when everyone else find out, and then that way it's all out.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, why? Because Yelena doesn't. We don't know that Yelena knows he was Ronin, and she doesn't. That would be immaterial because she just knows that Hawkeye went off with Natasha, and then Natasha was dead. She doesn't. There is no connection with Yelena to
to actual Ronin. Right.
Yeah.
It's just that she's putting out a hit on behalf of the mobsters, and yeah, that's fair. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like it's going to come out that he was Hawkeye to everyone else.
Oh, everyone knows he's Hawkeye.
No, sorry, Ronan. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ronan. Yeah, I think that's where it's going to be like, ooh, shock, pause, and roll credits, and then post credit scene.
We'll see.
That's
So yeah,
most likely.
the next
Yeah.
scene is them walking through the park, and that's where they have the talk about the power structure of the tracksuit mafia, which is what I was saying. Like they were a bigger deal, or I shouldn't say a bigger deal. They were way more demonstrative of what they could do before Ronan showed up, and
That's a good way of putting it.
yes,
Yeah.
and now they have to work more in the shadows.
Right. They got to climb up that criminal ladder again to be feared.
Well,
I guess.
I think they're in the same spot. What I think the idea here is for the benefit of Wilson Fisk, who traditionally isn't seen as the villain. We know as the audience he is, but publicly facing, he's just a guy on the community that people like. He's got a lot of money. He's a philanthropist, but he's not seen as the villain. And so if you keep doing things as the Tracksuit Mafia, that keeps getting closer and closer to people like, oh, Wilson Fisk has something to do with that. And that feels him as the kingpin. So that's what I mean more of like, they're in the same position they always were. It's more just we need to be quiet so that we don't bring too much attention to Wilson Fisk, uncle. Is that's the idea I got from
I mean
how it works, but also what Clint was talking to Kate about.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the thing that makes the most sense. They're in New York City. That is infamously how the New York City crime mafias worked at the time, right? The head Don was so far removed from all the crime that he was never caught red-handed, but making all the calls. It's just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, we could definitely see that for Kingpin. And usually those boss families are like, because they're paying off everyone around their neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff. They're like, they're not real gangsters. They had us over for truffles and biscuits for the other day. Like, no one evil can do that. But yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess they decide they're going to break into Eleanor's penthouse and get more information, because I think they started being like, well, Jack is probably an issue.
Yeah.
He's a murderer and they need more information. But really they find out that Kazi has been employed by a shell company, I think Sloan Limited.
Yep.
Which I guess the idea is that he's obviously been employed by Eleanor.
Right.
Because he's listed as an employee. And then Kate loses her access. And Clint walks into the Ronin sword held by Jack. And that's the end of the episode.
Yep.
All right. So
they're definitely pushing him as the guy that killed Dumont or whatever his face was.
Oh, Armand.
Yeah. They're definitely pushing that narrative now, but I guess I still don't believe that he did it.
I look at it as he's like, who's in this house? I'm going to protect the house.
Yeah.
And then,
but he's there doing something slimy for sure in the house.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would he have the sword? If it was just like, I feel like he ran into me.
I feel like he has it because he's like, oh, there's intruders. I'm gonna, like, the same way you would see someone pick up a bat.
Right. I get that, but why specifically that sword when the
he has
show
it on him? What do you mean?
No, but the show goes to show you so much. So it's like when she comes home for the first time, it's like, whoa, there's a lot more swords around because of him. So you're like, okay,
more swords, but not like there was never swords.
Right, I get that, but my point is, I'm like, why would you specifically take the sword that you stole? You've already established the fact that you're a good swordsman. So any sword that you use of the collections that you have on display would have been enough to defend yourself. But specifically, you're going after the sword that is the one that Ronan used and all this kind of stuff. They're definitely like leading that on. But I mean, the only way they could have done is like, oh, there's still some dried blood on the sword. It's like, he definitely killed Armand. But I don't know, whatever. It's already pretty much established, but we need that link. We need to be like, was it him? Are you holding the smoking gun or bleeding knife to this point? It's just
yeah, I didn't see it that way.
Yeah,
I kind of saw it as just they're more interested in Ronan and how that specter is kind of proceeding over all of the events here.
Yeah.
I think yeah, that's what I think. I don't know that I don't know that it was a choice. We already saw that it's a retractable sword that he can keep in his.
Yeah, the blade is fully retractable into the handle, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Yes. Doesn't make sense, but it means that would be the sword he would have on him all the time.
Yeah,
it's retractable. It's there.
Practicality.
If you were there doing something, like, I feel like he's going to be the one that ends up being like some small time crook as opposed to anyone else we've talked to. Like maybe he is just like, oh yeah, like I'm just here to like steal money or whatever.
The other day too, I was thinking like, how cool would it be if he went up against at some point Dane Whitman's Black Knight and just get to a fencing medieval battle.
I mean,
I don't know if that happens in the comics.
I would have to see Dane Whitman actually use the sword. If we're basing it off of just what happens in Eternals, I don't even know if that guy's good with a sword.
No, I mean, and also that's a claymore. That's a two-handed sword. He's not going to go up against a fencer with a one-handed sword versus a two-handed sword.
He doesn't have to
fight out the wet bottle. I get that, but
yeah.
I mean, you would for a sword fighter in that situation, assuming it's life or death with the ebony blade, assuming it is. You would choose a sword where you'd have advantage for. So mobility would be the thing. So having a one-handed sword versus a two-handed sword, because just the claymore is you swing and then you're exposed and you die.
I agree with you.
Yep.
I agree with you. Let's see. What is there anything else to talk about? I know that people are like, maybe that's not Clint as Ronan in the flashback to William dying.
Maybe not. But who else would it be? Like, it's just why
Eleanor. People think it could be.
Oh God, that I just feel like that's so messy at that point.
Well, so
like I guess it could be
Jack. This is based on people's knowledge of the comics. In the comics,
right.
Echo thinks Daredevil killed her father when really it was Kingpin. So if they're setting up the same dynamic here, she would think. I guess that's the issue here. It's muddied because she just knows Ronan did it, which we also know, but we don't know if it was Clint Barton Ronan, because in the comics, Clint Barton is the second Ronan. It was actually Echo was Ronan before.
Yeah, Ronan's just a title. It means it's
I mean, like, all of these are just titles, but because we'll see Hawkeye can move to Kate Bishop as well. Like all of them are
correct,
and Yelena will be Black Widow and stuff like that. So like. They're all just titles, but what I mean is he was the second Ronin.
Right.
So if people know he was the second Ronin, there is room for someone else to be that Ronin, in addition to all that idea that Echo has the wrong idea of who killed her father. I think that's why people are pushing that. I think it just makes more sense if it was him and he just has to pay for that.
Yeah, I would much rather that, because like the whole show is about like consequence. To me, it's about consequences, accountability, and taking responsibility for your actions and all that kind of stuff, right? It's Kate in that first episode with the bell tower thing being like, this is why my mother cut me off from the credit cards and all this kind of stuff to teach me a lesson. I'm like, oh man, how nice would it be to like, that's the lesson you learned as a privileged kid, is like, oh, I'm got my credit cards cut off, but I still got my freaking banging apartment in Manhattan. It's just like, what? It's the lesson here. There's no lesson.
That's why I agree with you that it's for me, it's closer to accountability, but I still maintain Kate Bishop wasn't the best idea. If you were, and we're only talking about when you're putting it up against the other shows and how well they accomplished their themes. This one stays being muddy for me because I think you're right in that it is about accountability, like paying for things you've done. And to have Kate Bishop be such a prominent figure in this story detracts from that idea, because yes, clearly Hawkeye has stuff he has to pay for. Kate doesn't really. Yes, she knocked over it seems immaterial in comparison to someone who went on a killing spree.
Bingo. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm like, don't conflate the two together. She knocked over a bell tower. She caused property damage. This guy friggin' went on a murder spree. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, there was no loss of life with Kate's issue.
There could have been. There could have been someone.
There wasn't though.
At the
Like
bottom,
we know that.
but...
we know that there wasn't. Is what I'm
we
saying.
know there wasn't.
We know there wasn't.
Confirmed 0 kills versus Hawkeye. Confirmed many kills. Many.
So that's why I'm like, it's harder for me to be like, yeah, this is what a great show, because it's like, it's good. I enjoyed this episode. I'm having a time, but it feels like a lot of good moments that don't lead up to a solid, good show.
I agree.
It always feels like there's something holding it back. So yeah, it's not like I'm like, how could people like this show? I'm having fun watching it. Like I enjoy when I watch it. It's just then I compare it to the experience I had with those first 2 shows, which is WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, and how well they were able to unpack their themes using the characters they put in the title. Right. Like Wanda and Vision both explored that grief, and again, I felt closer to them at the end of the show. Falcon and Winter Soldier both dealt with imposter syndrome, and they were able to unpack it, and I felt closer to them at the end of that show. We talked about Loki. Yeah, like it had its moments. It was getting there, especially if we're talking about self-love and all of that. And then it was like, nah, fuck it, never mind.
U-turn. We'll do a U-turn at the end. Yeah.
This show, I'm just like, how are you going to get this accomplished? Because we still have to serve Kate Bishop. Yeah, she doesn't really have it. If you are just saying like, oh yeah, like she's got a skewed view of the world because she's a rich young kid, it's like, yeah, I guess that doesn't seem like it's the same journey as
it's
someone
definitely
who feels
not.
This guilt and loss about what effect this is having on their family, what effect it's having on them, and the loss that they've had physically, emotionally.
Yeah,
it seems like, I don't know, man. Like, how are we gonna get this accomplished?
Yeah, and it's clear that Marvel's not leaning into the or more meta concept of like, oh, this is accountability for whiteness and like the decisions and the privilege that goes along with that, in the sense where it's like, oh, she destroyed the bell tower just for fun, and Ronan went on a murder spree because he thought he could bypass the due process aspect of judicial systems, or just go straight towards the murderous vigilante thing. The ultimate issue is, at the end of the day, if this is about accountability, this series, it's never going to get us to a place where Hawkeye's ending in this series is genuinely like, oh yeah, you've atoned for those sins, because it can't possibly be like that. We can't possibly come to that conclusion. It just needs to be like, oh yeah, you're justified in murdering those people because they work for the Kingpin. They're already establishing this like, hey, these gangsters that you killed, they had good in them. Like the father that you killed of the tracksuits raised Echo, and there's nothing bad about Echo, but because you were like, hey, you're a part of the tracksuits, your decision-making process was too simplistic, a lot of people that could have been put back on the right pathway and away from crime, you took that away from because you just made that decision yourself. They're not gonna be looking at that in terms of writing. Do I wish they would? Absolutely, I wish they would,
but they can't.
But they're not going to. Not going to.
Yeah. I just think that, like, it's why I said last episode, I wish the Ronin stuff stayed in Endgame. Like, I don't like, to me, yeah, he did a bunch of bad things, and then for me, it's like, yeah, people might think this is not enough, but I'm like, yeah, losing Nat, like that whole thing on Vormir, like that's a big deal. Like that's the turning point, is that he lost family in his effort, like in his whole, like Nat is family to him, and like to be right there as she gets killed and he can't do anything to stop it, and it's like, and then he does ultimately have to just let her go. Like that is the sacrifice. That is to me the end of that arc of, I feel bad about what I did with Ronan. It's like, okay, I have a chance to get back my family. The cost is I'm not going to have all my family. Like I can't be able to come out on the other end of this with everybody back that I wanted to have back. Yeah. And like, again, I'm not saying that's the perfect ending, but I'm like, I feel like that's it. Like, I don't know, like what else we're going to explore.
There's nothing more satisfying than that already. You're absolutely right, because the idea of like, first, like the Ronin stuff staying in Endgame, I completely agree. I completely agree. There's no point in exploring that in this capacity because it's not going to be explored well. There's no way we could be like, as an audience, being like, yeah, that's a good lesson for him to learn to never do that again. He's already learned the lesson. He's not doing it already. He's already being like, okay, that's a part of my past I'm ashamed of. I'm moving on. I'm booking a laser tattoo appointment removal surgery thing as soon as possible. And I'm glad I grew out my mohawk. Like, that was an interesting 5 years. I'm not going back. He's done the work already. There's no point in making him revisit this, except for the fact that he's like, I got to save this one person now because of the fact that I
know who's coming after Ronin.
Exactly.
So like, that is for me where the Ronin stuff would end. I get the idea of like, okay, like it's come back to haunt him. Yeah, maybe I don't feel like he feels he's not already haunted by it, but sure, this is another way to move the plot forward. It's just I don't feel like that I'm gonna get any more like a deeper sense of how he feels.
The only
and that's what I mean about these shows, of feeling a deeper connection. And like, I already feel like I got what I'm gonna get out of Clint Barton.
All we're going to get out of this, if this plays out the way that the writing is leading us to believe, is that he gets the Hawkeye suit back and he gets to burn it. And then
the Ronin suit,
the Ronin suit, he burns it, and then he takes on his full Hawkeye costume redesign, which is, of course, the thumbnail in the Disney Plus show. So you see what his end Hawkeye official outfit looks like, and it's just like, okay. I mean, it's sure. Okay. It's nothing special.
This is, I know it always sounds like I'm down on the show. It's just, we are talking about like such a strong start with these Disney Plus shows and how they actually effectively used the time they had to dig into the title characters. And I feel like with Loki and Hawkeye, interesting, it's the two shows where it was just the two white guys
that are not connecting
ostensibly just the two white guys in the title, because I do like, I mean, and this show is proving they are saying Kate Bishop isn't Hawkeye yet. She doesn't associate with being Hawkeye, so they really are just talking about Clint Barton. Like, and it's not that they're not connecting with it, it's that they didn't put the effort into actually bringing you along with, because WandaVision is a woman dealing with grief, and yes, Vision is there as well, but he is other because he's not human. And then Falcon Winter Soldier, it's the black lead with and sorry, Bucky as well. But it just feels like something happened when they got to the two white guys as the leads, and that
it's business as usual. I feel
my complaint about Loki was, you've got people of color and women who are way more interesting and that we're actually digging into, but they want to push Loki and Owen Wilson. That's not to say they don't do a good job in the show, but it was like, it seems like you missed the point of those first two shows where we were actually digging in and locking in with the title characters, not just using the title characters as a way to explore other characters.
I've heavily noticed this as well, and it's I call it like writing segregation, where it's like, okay, we have a white cis male lead, and great, so we know the formula for that already. We know the formula that leads to millions of dollars, so let's not change anything about that. But we don't know the formula with diverse leads, with BIPOC communities or women or like LGBTQ. So we're just going to leave that alone and let it develop the way Black Panther did, because we left that alone and it worked out beautifully for us. So we just need to do that and leave them alone in that category. So it's like a segregation and of ideas, and not an overlap of ideas of like, hey, what did we learn from Falcon Winter Soldier? What can we take from that writing team and bring it to Loki, to Hawkeye? But they haven't done that because they're just
I get the sense these were all kind of developed around the same time, so it would be hard to do that,
I guess. But even then, the idea of like, let's take this comic as inspiration to true
at that point. In the second seasons they certainly can do that, but I think all of these first seasons like you hear it, like they all were made around, like in between. The germ of the idea could have happened before, but it was kind of like, oh, we're moving forward with this basically around the time they were filming Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
So all of these ideas came from that. So you wouldn't know what works or what doesn't work.
Right.
Ahead of
now,
that.
hopefully they get to move on season 2 to be like, okay, we're noticing that white male leads are not as interesting as we once thought.
Well, I mean, that's not what's happening though, is the Loki and Hawkeye are the two shows everyone's like, oh, so good, right? This is really going on.
Right, but that's their lens and all that kind of stuff, and that's their bias.
But what I'm saying
right?
is that's what they're chasing after, that kind of praise.
Well, of course that they're chasing after that kind of praise. Any praise is good praise in that world. They're just not aware of how they could be redistributed and it could be better praise later on. And that they're slowly achieving that. They slowly are. They really, really are. And that it's just like they need to be fully convinced with dollars, I guess, that this is a more successful formula versus what they've done.
I mean,
because
that's hard to do with streaming service that you own. Like Marvel doesn't, but it's all in-house in that sense.
So yes, absolutely. It's very hard to
harder
write.
to track that. I
but
do
I guess
know
you
that they're
could look
saying
at
Hawkeye has lower viewership, but
well, yeah, you're right though. I everyone that I've heard talk to about this show, that they're like, I like this show. I'm like, okay, what about it? I'm like, what I'm getting, and this is definitely semantics, but semantics are important in this. To like the show more is not to mean that the show is better. Because when I say, do you like the show more, or do you think this is a better done show in terms of writing, everything, compared to Falcon Winter Soldier, compared to WandaVision, all that kind of stuff? And they're like, oh no, it's definitely not better, but they like it more because it's easier to process. So like, I can fully appreciate when people are like, because I talked to someone, they're like, I like it better because now I don't have to think about how this scene links up to this and this links up to this. I'm like, yeah, okay, I understand that for the lay person, especially like on the day of Thanksgiving where it was released, and around that period of time where it was like, let's just gather around as a family and have fun and not like deep dive into Marvel lore. But it's people like you and me and like the big nerds that are like, we love the deep dives, and that's what's more fun about it than the actual like, oh, I could just sit here and turn my brain off. Because I'm like, that's what I did for What If, and then What If did a U-turn. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna rewatch this whole thing and turn my brain on now. This is great. I just feel like people want something different.
I don't think I would characterize it as we like the deep dive into Marvel, because what we are talking about is actively what are they actually creating with these characters, not how does this connect to the Marvel stuff.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. Yeah, we're not going like, oh, this connects the deep roster dive of we're just
that's not what we liked about Falcon and Winter Soldier. It was
from a storytelling standpoint.
How do these Marvel characters reckon with things that like we might reckon with on, granted, a smaller scale, but still we see ourselves in these characters. We feel seen and spoken to through their interactions versus because if the point of Loki is, hey, you're insignificant just like Loki, sure, I get it, but like it didn't work as well for me as actually feeling like, oh, this character is going through something that I have gone through, and like actually feeling like it's being explored and dealt with in a respectful way. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, as much negative things as I have to say about Shang-Chi, there are elements of that movie that I'm like, yeah, that is very, very much what it's like to be an Asian male. It's just that I wish that the audience doesn't see it as a joke as much as they did see it as a joke. I'm like, that speaks to a lot of insecurities that I have, and y'all are laughing, and that's kind of why I would like you to rewatch that. But it does do a good job of that. And I'm specifically talking about the airline scene with the stewardess. Like that is like, I'm like, the amount of times I've been just cut off by people that think they have something more important to say when it's really like, oh, just to let you know, we're this. I'm like, so you're interrupting me to repeat what was just said on the overhead announcement. Like, what the hell? Like, why did you're only interrupting me? Like, why? Like, out of everyone here, why are you only interrupting? Like, it's one of those weird things, but they do a good job of showing it. And yeah, this is not, I don't know if this show is not interested in, or we just got to wait and see.
Yeah, we can. I'm definitely here to wait and see. I think. Yeah.
But at the 50% point, it's when you and I are having a hard time establishing what the clear goal of this show is. It's a little bit tricky, but yeah. I mean,
as I said last episode, I don't think that there needs to be a clear goal for it to be an enjoyable show. I agree. Enjoying the time you spend with the characters for me is always going to trump everything. It's just now then when you're talking about like what elevates the show, it is what was the theme they were unpacking. That is what elevates. So I'm not saying like I don't know what the theme is, so it's not good. It's like, yeah, I am enjoying watching the show. I just think that in comparison to the other stuff, it doesn't feel as elevated as that stuff. Yeah. And that's where I'm leaving it. I'm not saying that now everyone should like those shows better or anything. It's just how I feel about what has been put out. Yeah, it's the stuff about, like, a lot of people like different things about the content they can consume, and you and I like the MCU content for the ability, like you said, tell real life stories within this fantastical universe that they've made. And this is not a story that's either successfully connecting to us, or either that or not clear to us right now. And that's all we're really saying. I think these shows, the shows, who they choose to make the center of them is important for these shows. And I get that Echo is going to have her own show. Yeah. Kate Which is Bishop why might be the lead in season 2 of this, or whatever iteration this is. But to say that Clint is the head of, or like the center of this story, I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying it causes issues because you've got Kate and Maya, who are seemingly more fertile ground to do something new, as we just explained, in terms of Clint kind of seeming like he already got to the end of his arc by Endgame. So now it looks like we're just unearthing or like peeling off old scabs or something, as opposed to the other shows that were actually to go deeper and like unearth new stuff. And it's so meta. It's so meta because even Kate Bishop is even saying like, you have a branding issue, you need this, and it's right. It's hard to write a series about a character that's constantly like, all right, I'm gone now, bye, I don't want to engage in this, I want to be with my family, bye. Always, like, it's hard to write something about that. He's already established as the guy that's flaking every single time. So I'm just like, all right, well, this is not good, because especially with the idea of like, okay, well, I'm helping you out. This, like that second episode where he's like, yeah, you're probably never going to see me again. This phone number is only for emergencies. Bye. Like, if this goes well, like he just wants to leave and just do his own thing. So it's hard to connect him to this, I feel, when he just wants to peace out and mind his own business, which I can appreciate too. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. That's this episode. We'll see how episode 4 goes. Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network, with other great shows like Bad Game Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, a whole bunch of great stuff. So please head on over to thatshelf.com. Look at the podcast section. You'll find those shows, our show, more shows than I even listed. So have a great time there. And if you want to hear old episodes of our show, go to tdferything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. And we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, whole bunch of places. So please go there to wherever you get your podcasts, rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. If we aren't where you get your podcasts, get in touch with us via email or Twitter. And let us know what you think of this season so far, now that we're at the halfway mark. Yeah. Thank you. Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.